When Riley Martinez welded the final seam on the custom exhaust system, she had no idea she'd just signed a death warrant or saved a life. The sparks flew in rhythmic patterns, her hands moving with precision of someone who'd learned to speak through metal and fire instead of words. She was deaf, had been since birth, and in her world of silence, machines were the only things that made sense. The Harley belonged to a man called Havoc, sergeant at arms for the Devil's Disciples Motorcycle Club. He'd rolled into her shop 3 days ago with an exhaust system, so damaged it looked like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it. Riley had quoted him $800 in 2 weeks. He'd paid cash, no questions, and told her he'd be back. Now, at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night, Riley stood back and admired her work. The welds were perfect. Each seam flowing into the next like liquid metal frozen in time. But she'd done something else. Something she did on every job when she was tired and her guard was down, when muscle memory took over and her hands moved without conscious thought. She'd welded words into the frame, hidden messages in sign language alphabet, each letter formed by the shape and pattern of the welds. Most people would never notice. They'd just see skilled metalwork. But someone who knew ASL, someone who really looked, would see what Riley had written. Tonight, exhausted and terrified and running on 3 hours of sleep, Riley's hands had betrayed her. They'd welded the truth she'd been too afraid to speak. Help me, sister taken. 1847, Canyon Road. 6 days. Before we dive into how 63 bikers decoded this message and launched a rescue operation that would change everything, if you appreciate stories about ordinary people who risk everything to save the ones they love, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more incredible true stories of courage and survival. And if this story touches your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe that heroes come in unexpected forms. Now, let's go back to where this all began. Riley Martinez lived in 2 worlds of silence. The first was a literal silence of being deaf. She'd never heard her own voice, never heard music, never heard the sound of the welding torch she wielded with artist-like precision. The second silence was the one she'd chosen, the silence of not telling anyone that her sister had been kidnapped. Her shop, Martinez Custom Fabrication, sat on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, in an industrial area where nobody asked questions and nobody looked too closely at what happened behind closed doors. The building was small, just 1,200 square feet of workspace, but it was hers. Every tool had been bought with money she'd earned, every machine maintained by her own hands. Riley was 29 years old, thin and strong in the way of people who work with metal all day. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a tight bun, more for safety than style. She wore welding goggles pushed up on her forehead like a crown, her arms covered in small burn scars that mapped out 10 years of learning her trade. Her hands were calloused, competent, and right now, they were shaking. Because 5 days ago, her sister Elena had vanished. Elena was 17, bright and beautiful, and the only family Riley had left. Their parents had died in a car accident when Riley was 22 and Elena was 10. Riley had fought the foster care system, worked 3 jobs, and somehow managed to keep them together. She'd raised Elena while building her business, teaching herself advanced metalworking through YouTube videos and library books, taking Elena to every doctor's appointment and school meeting and soccer game. Elena was supposed to be in her senior year of high school. She was supposed to be applying to colleges, worrying about prom. Living a normal teenage life, Riley had sacrificed everything to give her. Instead, 5 days ago, Elena had left their apartment to meet a friend at the mall and never came home. Riley had found a note on her workbench the next morning, printed on plain white paper in generic font, no signature, no return address. The message was simple and absolutely terrifying. Your sister is safe. For now, you will receive instructions. Tell anyone, police, family, friends, and she dies. We're watching. Below the text was a photograph that made Riley's blood run cold. Elena, sitting in a concrete room, her eyes wide with fear, holding today's newspaper. Proof of life. Proof that this was real. The instructions had come 2 hours later, via a burner phone that had been left in Riley's mailbox. A distorted voice, impossible to identify, speaking slowly so Riley could read the lips on the video call. You have 7 days. $50,000. Cash. We'll tell you where to drop it. Follow instructions exactly. Tell no one. We're always watching. Then the call had ended. $50,000. Riley had exactly $2,847 in her bank account. Her shop made enough to keep the lights on and food on the table, but barely. She had no family to borrow from, no friends wealthy enough to loan that kind of money. She thought about going to the police 1,000 times, had picked up her phone, and started to dial 911 at least 50 times. But each time, she'd see Elena's terrified face in that photograph. She'd remember the warning. Tell anyone and she dies. So Riley had done the only thing she knew how to do. She'd worked. She'd taken every job that came through her door, charged premium rates for rush work, and welded like her life depended on it, because Elena's life to depend on it. 3 days into the deadline, she had $8,200. Not even close to enough. That's when Havoc had walked into her shop. He was 6'2", 230 pounds of muscle and leather and controlled danger. His vest was covered in patches. Devil's Disciples Motorcycle Club, Sergeant-at-Arms, Phoenix Chapter. His face was weathered and scarred, his beard shot through with gray, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, even though he was indoors. He'd pulled his damaged Harley into her shop, and Riley had felt every survival instinct scream at her to refuse the job. Bikers meant trouble. Bikers meant questions. Bikers meant attention she couldn't afford. But bikers also meant money. And Riley was desperate. She quoted him $800, expecting him to negotiate, to walk away, to take his business somewhere else. Instead, he pulled out a roll of cash that made Riley's heart skip, counted out $1,000, and set it on her workbench. Keep the change, he'd sign, his hands moving in perfect ASL. Rush job. 2 days. Riley had stared at him, shocked. Most hearing people didn't know sign language. Most people didn't bother to learn. But this dangerous-looking biker was signing to her like he'd been doing it his whole life. You know, ASL? Riley had signed back, unable to hide her surprise. Havoc had smiled slightly, a crack in his dangerous exterior. Daughter's deaf. Learned when she was born. Wouldn't trade her for anything. Something in Riley's chest had cracked open at that moment. This terrifying man loved his daughter enough to learn an entire language for her. Enough to see her not as disabled, but as perfect exactly as she was. Riley had taken the job. For 2 days, she'd worked on Havoc's exhaust system, pushing herself past exhaustion, past the fear that clawed at her every waking moment, past a mental countdown that screamed Elena had 5 days for days, 3 days left. She'd rebuilt the entire exhaust from scratch, custom fabricated every piece, and welded it together with the skill that had made her shop quietly famous among Phoenix's motorcycle community. She'd charged $800 and delivered $2,000 worth of work because something about Havoc's kindness, about his casual fluency in her language, made her want to prove she was worth knowing. And in her exhaustion, in her terror, in her desperate need to tell someone, anyone, what was happening, her hands had betrayed her. They'd welded the truth into the metal, a cry for help she didn't consciously choose to make. A message she only discovered after the work was done, when she stepped back and saw what her muscle memory had created. Help me. Sister taken. 1847, Canyon Road. 6 days. Riley had stared at the welds in horror, her hands flying to her mouth. What had she done? The kidnappers had been clear. Tell anyone and Elena dies. Did this count as telling? Would they somehow know? She considered grinding down the welds, removing the evidence, making the message disappear. But she was out of time. Havoc was coming to pick up his bike in 2 hours, and the metal needed time to cool. Grinding now would compromise the structural integrity, and Riley's pride wouldn't let her deliver substandard work even if her sister's life was on the line. So she'd left it, the message hidden in plain sight, a desperate prayer that maybe, just maybe, someone would see it and understand and help. But who would see it? Who would even know to look? Riley cleaned up her workspace with mechanical precision, organizing her tools, sweeping the metal shavings, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She told herself the message was invisible, that Havoc would never notice, that she was safe, Elena was safe, Everything would be fine. She was wrong on all counts. Havoc arrived at midnight, exactly when he said he would. He rolled into her shop on a loaner bike, dismounted with the casual grace of someone who'd been riding since before Riley was born, and walked toward his rebuilt Harley with the focused intensity of a man inspecting his most prized possession. Riley watched from her workbench, her heart hammering, her palms sweating despite the cool night air. She'd turned on every light in the shop, illuminating her work like a stage, unable to help her pride even as fear clawed at her throat. Havoc circled the bike slowly, his eyes moving over every inch of the exhaust system, every weld, every joint. His hands traced the metalwork with a reverence that surprised Riley. Most customers just wanted to know if it worked. Havoc was examining it like art. Then he stopped. His hand froze on a particular weld, his fingers tracing the pattern. His head tilted slightly, and Riley saw his eyes narrow behind his sunglasses. He'd seen it. He'd seen the message. Riley's blood turned to ice. Her hands started to shake, and she gripped the edge of her workbench to steady herself. What would he do? Would he think she was crazy? Would he call someone? Would the kidnappers somehow find out? Havoc straightened slowly, pulled his phone from his pocket, and turned on the flashlight. He aimed it directly at the welds, examining them from different angles, his expression unreadable. Then he started taking photographs. Close-ups of every weld, every seam, every place where Riley's hands had formed letters in ASL. He took at least 30 photos, methodical and thorough, documenting every detail. Riley wanted to run, wanted to hide, wanted to grab her phone and warn the kidnappers that she hadn't told anyone on purpose, that it was an accident, that they shouldn't hurt Elena because of this. But she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only watch as Havoc finished his photography and walked toward her, his expression serious, his movements deliberate. He stopped 3 feet from Riley's workbench and removed his sunglasses. His eyes were gray, sharp, and kind. Not angry, not confused. Knowing. How long, he signed, his hands moving with perfect clarity. Riley's breath caught. He understood. He'd read the message and understood what it meant. Her hands moved before her brain could stop them. 5 days. She has 2 days left. Havoc's jaw tightened. Police? Riley shook her head violently. They said they'd kill her. They're watching me. Always. Havoc signed, and there was something tactical in the way he asked it, like he was gathering intelligence rather than making conversation. Riley considered. The kidnappers called once a day, always at exactly 6 p.m., always demanding proof that Riley hadn't told anyone. But were they really watching 24/7? Could they afford that level of surveillance? I don't know, she signed honestly. They call every day. They sent the note. They know where I live and work. Havoc nodded slowly, processing. Then his hands moved again, and what he signed made Riley's world tilt. My daughter, she's 19 now. 4 years ago, she was taken. Trafficking ring. They held her for 6 days. He paused, and Riley saw pain flash across his face. Police said don't pay, don't negotiate. Said they'd handle it. They failed. We got her back ourselves. Riley's hands were shaking so hard, she could barely sign. How? Havoc smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Riley had ever seen. Brothers, 63 of us. We found her in 18 hours. He paused. I know what you're thinking, but this is different than telling police. This is family helping family, and we know how to stay invisible. Riley wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to hand this burden to someone else, to let these dangerous men with their leather vests and brotherhood handle what she couldn't handle alone. But the fear was paralyzing. They'll know, she signed, tears streaming down her face. They'll know I told someone and they'll kill her. Havoc shook his head. They won't know, because you're not going to change anything. You're going to do exactly what you've been doing. Work in your shop, answer their calls, act terrified and alone. Meanwhile, we're going to find your sister. And when we do, when we have her safe, then you're going to get a call from the kidnappers. And you're going to act surprised. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed Riley the screen. This is my daughter, Arya. She's alive because we didn't wait for permission to save her. Let's save your sister. The photograph showed a beautiful young woman with dark curly hair, wearing a college sweatshirt, sitting on a Harley and signing, "I love you," to the camera. She looked happy. "Oh, saved." Riley looked at the photo, then at Havoc, then at her own hands, the hands that had unconsciously welded a cry for help into metal, the hands that had been trying to save Elena even when Riley's conscious mind was too afraid to act. Her hands moved slowly, forming the sign that would change everything. "Help me." Havoc pulled out his phone and made a call. Riley couldn't hear it, obviously, but she watched his lips move, watched his expression shift from serious to absolutely focused. He was calling his brothers. He was mobilizing an army. Within 2 minutes, Riley saw the first headlight appear in the distance. Then another, then 5 more, then so many she stopped counting. The rumble must have been deafening. 63 Harley-Davidsons converging on her shop in the middle of the night, their chrome glinting under streetlights, their riders moving with military precision. They filled her parking lot, the empty lot next door, the street outside. 63 members of the Devil's Disciples Motorcycle Club, all answering a call to save a girl they'd never met. Riley stood in her shop doorway, overwhelmed and terrified and desperately hopeful, as these dangerous-looking men dismounted their bikes and gathered around Havoc's Harley, examining the weld she created, reading the message she'd hidden. Then something happened that made Riley's throat tight with emotion. One by one, the bikers started signing. Not all of them, maybe a dozen, but enough. They were introducing themselves, asking questions, treating her not as someone broken, but as someone who spoke a different language. A language many of them had learned for the same reason Havoc had: love. Havoc raised his hand, and the crowd went silent. He pulled Riley forward gently, positioning her where everyone could see her, then began signing while speaking aloud for the hearing members. "This is Riley Martinez. 5 days ago, her 17-year-old sister Elena was kidnapped. The kidnappers want $50,000 in 2 days. Riley can't pay, can't go to police, can't ask for help without risking her sister's life." He paused. "She didn't ask for help. She welded it into my exhaust. A message she didn't even know she was leaving." He gestured to the bike, where several members were photographing the welds, their phones creating a constellation of flashlight beams. Riley gave us an address: 1847 Canyon Road. "We have 43 hours to verify it, locate Elena, and extract her before the deadline. We do this quiet. We do this clean. And we do not fail." The bikers erupted, not in cheers, but in immediate, organized action. Some pulled out laptops. Others made phone calls. A few spread a map across a bike seat and started marking locations. This wasn't a gang preparing for violence. This was a tactical team preparing for a rescue operation. A woman in her 50s approached Riley, signing as she spoke. "I'm Red, trauma nurse, 20 years ER experience. When we get your sister back, I'll make sure she's okay." A younger man, maybe 30, signed next. "Ghost, IT specialist. Going to track any digital footprint these bastards left. They're not as invisible as they think." An older biker with a white beard signed slowly, carefully. "They call me Preacher. Used to be Army Ranger. Hostage rescue. Did 4 tours. We're going to get her back, sweetheart. I promise you that." One by one, they introduced themselves, not as criminals or outlaws, but as fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers, soldiers and nurses, and engineers who'd all chosen to wear a patch because brotherhood meant something to them, because protecting the innocent meant everything. Havoc brought Riley a folding chair, a bottle of water, and a notepad. "Write down everything," he signed. "Every phone call, every detail about the kidnappers, every moment you remember from the day Elena disappeared. The smallest detail might save her life." Riley sat down and started writing, her hands moving across the paper with the same precision she used welding metal. Every memory, every fragment of information, every tiny detail she'd noticed. While she wrote, the bikers worked with stunning efficiency. Ghost had multiple laptops open, running searches on a Canyon Road address. Preacher was coordinating teams, assigning roles, preparing equipment. Red was assembling a medical kit that looked like it could handle field surgery. A biker named Smoke approached Havoc with a tablet, signing as he spoke. Canyon Road address is abandoned industrial complex. Foreclosed 3 years ago. No utilities, no official activity. Perfect place to hold someone. Another biker, younger, maybe 25, added more information. Satellite imagery shows 3 vehicles on site yesterday. 2 SUVs and a van, all with covered plates. Security? Havoc signed. 2 guards visible on external cameras. Probably more inside. Armed. Riley's hands froze on her notepad. Armed guards. Multiple vehicles. This wasn't some desperate criminal acting alone. This was organized. Professional. Havoc noticed her fear and moved to sit beside her. Hey! He signed, his hands gentle. More guards means more to coordinate. More vehicles means more noise when they try to escape. Professional criminals follow patterns. Patterns can be predicted. We've done this before. Your daughter, Riley signed. You said you got her back. How many guards did they have? Havoc's expression darkened. 14. Armed compound. 3 escape routes. He paused. We had 47 brothers that night. Took us 6 hours to plan and 40 minutes to execute. Aria came home without a scratch on her. And the kidnappers? Riley asked, not sure she wanted to know the answer. Havoc's hands moved slowly, deliberately. They lived. Barely. Police arrested them 3 days later when they got out of the hospital. They're in prison now. 25 years minimum. He met Riley's eyes. We don't murder. We rescue. There's a difference. Red approached with a cup of coffee for Riley, signing as she handed it over. I was there that night, when we brought Aria back. I've never seen anything more beautiful than that girl hugging her father. She smiled. Get ready for that feeling. The planning continued through the night. Riley watched in awe as these bikers, these men in women's society often feared or dismissed, worked with the coordination of a military unit. They divided into teams: reconnaissance, extraction, medical support, vehicle coordination, police liaison. Police liaison surprised Riley. She assumed they'd operate entirely outside the law. Havoc explained, signing patiently. We have contacts. Good cops who know sometimes the system moves too slow. They don't officially know what we're doing, but if things go wrong, they'll make sure nobody asks too many questions. He paused. We're not criminals. Riley, we're people who've learned that sometimes the rules don't protect the people who need it most. At 5:47 a.m., as the sun started painting the eastern sky pink and gold, Havoc gathered the group. Riley stood in the center, surrounded by 63 bikers who'd given up their night to save a girl they'd never met. We move at 9 p.m. tonight. Havoc signed and spoke simultaneously. Reconnaissance team leaves at noon. Extraction team positions at 8:45. We go in at exactly 9:14 p.m., 45 minutes before the kidnapper's scheduled call to Riley. He turned to Riley. You're going to go home. Sleep if you can. Act normal. Answer if they call. Tell them you're gathering money. When they call tonight at 6 p.m., you're going to act terrified and desperate like you've been this whole time. Can you do that? Riley nodded, but her hands were shaking. What if something goes wrong? What if they hurt her? Havoc's hands moved with absolute certainty. Nothing's going to go wrong. And even if something unexpected happens, we adapt. That's what brothers do. He paused. Trust us. Trust that we see your sister the way we see Aria, the way we see our own daughters and sisters. Trust that we won't stop until she's safe. A biker named Chains approached, holding something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a beautiful welded sculpture, a phoenix rising from flames, every feather made of intricate metalwork. Made this for my daughter when she was going through chemo. Chains signed. She beat cancer. Kept this on her nightstand the whole time. He pressed it into Riley's hands. Now it's yours. Reminder that people rise from fire. Your sister's going to rise too. Riley clutched the sculpture to her chest, unable to stop the tears that streamed down her face. These dangerous-looking men with their leather vests and powerful motorcycles weren't what society had taught her to fear. They were fathers. Protectors. Heroes wearing the wrong costume. Red gave Riley her phone number, making her promise to call if anything felt wrong. Ghost showed her an app he'd installed on her phone that would let them monitor her location and safety without the kidnappers knowing. Preacher squeezed her shoulder and signed, "See you tomorrow with your sister." Then, as quickly as they'd arrived, they dispersed. 63 motorcycles rolling out of her parking lot like a tide receding, leaving Riley standing alone in her shop with a welded phoenix in her hands and hope burning in her chest. The day passed in agonizing slow motion. Riley went home, tried to sleep, couldn't. She cleaned her apartment, organized tools, did anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling into terror. The burner phone the kidnappers had given her sat on her counter like a bomb waiting to explode. At 6 p.m. exactly, it rang. Riley answered the video call, her hands shaking, her face pale. The distorted voice on the other end was the same as always. Progress report. Riley's lips moved, forming words she knew the kidnappers could read. "I have 15,000. I'm trying to get more. Selling equipment. Borrowing from customers. Please, I need more time." "No more time. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., you'll receive drop location. Bring 50,000 or your sister dies. Understand?" Riley nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not fake tears, real ones. Because even with 63 bikers working to save Elena, Riley was still terrified, still desperate, still clinging to hope that felt impossibly fragile. "I understand," she mouthed. "Please don't hurt her." The call ended. Riley sat on her couch, clutching her phone, and waited. The app Ghost had installed showed her a map with small motorcycle icons scattered across Phoenix. The teams were moving into position. Reconnaissance team already at Canyon Road. Extraction team 30 minutes out. Medical team standing by. At 8:45 p.m., Riley's phone buzzed with a text from Havoc. In position, 15 minutes. She's going to be okay. Riley couldn't sit still anymore. She paced her apartment, the welded phoenix gripped in her hands, its metal edges digging into her palms. She'd spent 5 days being helpless, being terrified, being alone. Now 63 people she barely knew were risking everything to save her sister. At 9:14 p.m., the app showed all the motorcycle icons converge on Canyon Road. Then nothing. No updates. No texts. Just silence. Riley paced faster, her breath coming in short gasps. What was happening? Was Elena okay? Were the bikers safe? Had something gone wrong? At 9:47 p.m., 33 agonizing minutes later, her phone rang. Not the burner phone. Her personal phone. Havoc's number. Riley answered with shaking hands, and Havoc's face filled the screen. Behind him, Riley could see lights, movement, other bikers. And then Havoc stepped aside, and Elena was there. Elena, alive, her face bruised but whole, wrapped in a blanket, crying. Safe. Riley. Elena screamed, loud enough that Riley could read her lips perfectly. "Riley, they found me. They saved me." Riley collapsed onto her couch, sobbing so hard she couldn't see the screen, couldn't breathe, couldn't process anything except that Elena was alive. Her baby sister was alive and safe and coming home. Havoc's face reappeared on screen. He was signing now, his hands moving gently. "She's okay. Dehydrated, bruised, scared, but okay. Red's checking her now. No serious injuries. We're bringing her to you." "The kidnappers?" Riley signed, barely able to form the words. "Restrained. Zip-tied. Anonymous tip already called into police. They'll be arrested within the hour." Havoc paused, and his smile was fierce. "They'll never hurt anyone again." At 10:23 p.m., Riley heard the motorcycles before she saw anything. That rumble she couldn't actually hear, but could feel in her chest, vibrating through the floorboards of her apartment. She ran to the window and saw them. 63 Harleys pulling into her apartment complex's parking lot, their headlights creating a galaxy of light. Riley ran down the stairs, nearly falling in her desperation to get to the parking lot. She burst through the door and saw Havoc dismounting from his bike, saw Red helping someone off the back of another motorcycle. Saw Elena. Her sister looked so small, wrapped in that blanket, her face pale and drawn. But when she saw Riley, her expression transformed. She broke away from Red and ran. Actually ran, across the parking lot, and threw herself into Riley's arms. Riley caught her, held her, pulled her so close she could feel Elena's heartbeat against her chest. Both of them were crying, clutching each other, refusing to let go. Riley's hands moved to Elena's face, checking for injuries, making sure she was real and whole and safe. "I'm sorry," Elena was saying over and over. "I'm so sorry, Riley. I was so stupid. I met someone online and they seemed nice, and I thought it was safe, and I'm so sorry." Riley put her hand over Elena's mouth, stopping the flood of apologies. Her other hand moved in sign language, and she mouthed the words carefully so Elena could understand both ways. "Not your fault. Never your fault. You're safe. That's all that matters." Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face, and buried herself in Riley's shoulder. Riley looked up over her sister's head and saw 63 bikers watching them. These dangerous-looking men and women with their leather vests and battle-scarred faces, and every single one of them was smiling. Havoc approached slowly, giving the sister space. When he was close enough, he signed. "She's gonna be okay. Tough kid. Brave." He paused. Like her sister. Riley couldn't speak, couldn't sign, could only mouth, "Thank you," over and over until the words lost meaning. Red stepped forward with medical papers. Checked her thoroughly. She needs fluids, rest, and probably therapy. But physically, she's going to be fine. She handed Riley a card. "This is my personal number. Call me if she needs anything. Day or night. I mean it." Preacher approached next, his weathered face kind. "Police will want a statement tomorrow. We gave them an anonymous tip about the location. You don't know how Elena was found. You just got a call that she was spotted. Stick to that story. Keeps everyone safe." Ghost handed Riley a new phone. "Burner phones the kidnappers gave you. Destroyed. This is clean. New number. They can't contact you again." One by one, the bikers approached. Some to sign goodbye. Some to offer phone numbers. Some just a nod, a gesture that said, "We did this for you, and we'd do it again." Chains paused on his way to his bike and signed to Riley. "You welded a message asking for help. Takes courage to ask. More people should learn how." As the motorcycle started up again, preparing to disperse into the Phoenix night, Havoc remained behind. He pulled something from his vest pocket, a patch. Devil's Disciples Motorcycle Club. Across the bottom, it read "Family." "You're one of us now." He signed. "You and Elena both. You ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call. We answer. That's what family does." Riley took the patch with shaking hands, understanding the weight of what he was offering. Not membership in a motorcycle club, but acceptance into a brotherhood that protected its own. Havoc mounted his bike, but before he rolled away, he signed one more thing. "Your hands saved your sister. They welded the truth when your voice couldn't speak it. Never doubt the power of speaking your truth, however it comes out." Then he was gone. 63 motorcycles rolling away in a synchronized roar that Riley felt through her entire body. She stood in the parking lot with Elena wrapped in her arms and a patch clutched in her hand, watching the taillights disappear into the night. These men and women had given her back her sister, had risked themselves for strangers, had proven that sometimes the most dangerous-looking people were the ones most willing to protect the innocent. Riley looked down at Elena, who'd finally stopped crying and was just holding on like she'd never let go. "Who were they?" Elena asked, pulling back enough to look at her sister's face. Riley thought about how to answer, thought about leather vests and criminal reputations, and society's assumptions about who the good guys really were. Finally, she signed and spoke simultaneously so Elena could understand both ways. "Family. They're family." 3 days later, Riley was back in her shop, welding a custom frame for a motorcycle. She thought about taking time off, thought about closing the shop and focusing on Elena's recovery. But work was how she processed trauma, how she made sense of chaos, how she proved to herself that life could be normal again. Elena was asleep in the small office Riley had set up for her. The nightmares were bad, but Red had connected them with therapists who specialize in trauma. Elena was seeing her twice a week, and slowly, so slowly, the fear was starting to recede. Riley was halfway through a particularly complex weld when she felt the vibration of motorcycle engines. Not as many as that first night. Just 3. She looked up and saw Havoc pulling into her shop, along with Aria, his deaf daughter, and another biker Riley didn't recognize. Havoc dismounted and signed as he approached. Wanted to check on Elena and introduce you to someone. The unfamiliar biker was younger, maybe mid-20s, with multiple facial scars and kind eyes. Havoc signed as the man spoke. This is Marcus. 5 years ago, his wife was taken by traffickers. We found her, brought her home. He paused. He's starting a nonprofit, teaching people how to leave hidden messages when they're in danger. Digital signals, physical markers, even welding patterns. Marcus pulled out a tablet and showed Riley a website. Messages in Metal was the title. Below it, photographs of Riley's welds. The ASL letter she'd unknowingly created. The cry for help that had saved Elena. Want to use your story? Marcus signed, his hands moving carefully like someone still learning. Show people that asking for help can look different. That rescue can come from unexpected places. Would you be willing? Riley looked at her welds on the screen, at Elena sleeping peacefully in the office, at Havoc and Aria and Marcus, and all the hope they represented. She nodded. Yes, if it helps someone else. Yes. Over the next 6 months, Messages in Metal became a phenomenon. Riley's story spread across social media, not sensationalized, but honest. A deaf welder who unknowingly asked for help through her craft. A motorcycle club that answered. A sister who came home. The nonprofit taught metalworkers, artists, designers how to embed distress signals in their work. Taught people to look for signs of silent suffering. Trained volunteers to recognize hidden messages. Riley's shop became a training center. Every Saturday, she taught welding to at-risk youth, many of them deaf or disabled, showing them that their hands could speak truths their voices couldn't. Elena helped, translating for hearing students, sharing her story with the bravery of a survivor who refused to be defined by her trauma. The Devil's Disciples expanded the rescue program. What they'd done for Aria and Elena, they systematized. 47 successful rescues in the first year, 73 in the second. They partnered with legitimate organizations, trained law enforcement, became the bridge between official channels and the desperate people who fell through the cracks. Havoc brought Aria to the shop regularly. The 2 young women became close friends, bonded by trauma and rescue, and the knowledge that sometimes family wasn't blood, it was choice. One Saturday, while Riley was teaching a welding class, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find a young woman standing there, her hands trembling slightly as she signed. I think I left a message. The woman signed slowly. I didn't know if anyone would see it. Riley felt the room go quiet. Not silent. She'd never hear silence. But focused. Every student stopped working. Elena stepped closer. Havoc, who had been leaning against the doorway, straightened. Riley wiped her gloves on her jeans and signed back gently. Show me. The woman pulled out her phone and scrolled to the photo. It was a steel gate, ornate, decorative, beautiful, and woven into the scrollwork were tiny asymmetries, intentional curves, repeated angles. ASL, not words this time, but numbers, a date, a time, and one clear phrase. Not safe at home. Riley's chest tightened, not with fear, but with certainty. You did exactly the right thing. Riley signed. You're not invisible here. Havoc didn't step forward dramatically. He didn't bark orders. He simply tapped his phone once. Within minutes, bikes began arriving, quietly, respectfully. Not an army, a network. Red spoke softly with the woman, already assessing bruises that were half hidden under long sleeves. Ghost asked calm, precise questions. Preacher stood near the door, not blocking it, guarding it. Elena squeezed Riley's hand and signed. This is how it starts again, isn't it? Riley nodded. Yes, this is how it ends too. 2 years later, no one called Riley the deaf welder anymore. They called her the woman who taught people how to be seen. Her shop had expanded, not bigger machines, but bigger purpose. Metalworkers, tattoo artists, muralists, coders, seamstresses, people whose hands spoke when their voices couldn't. Hospitals quietly trained staff using Riley's methods. Schools taught students how to leave silent signals. Law enforcement studied patterns they'd ignored for decades. And the devil's disciples? They were never in headlines. But traffickers noticed something had changed. Victims were disappearing back home. Messages were being found. Help was arriving. One night, long after the shop closed, Riley stood alone, welding a simple exhaust pipe. Muscle memory kicked in. Her hands moved with care. She smiled and stopped herself. This time, she chose the message. She welded 4 words, small, precise, impossible mistake if you knew how to look. You are not alone. She shut off the torch. Somewhere out there, someone would see it. And now, someone would come.